Okay, so good evening. So the first topic for environment, okay, last week, what all things have been important. Let us try to cover that. So first is extinction tracker, very, very important, okay, 2026, and this is particularly with respect to IUCN report. Okay, what does IUCN list down? It talks about the red list, है ना? Red list that we talk about in the red list, what kind of species are extinct in the wild, extinct, okay, critically endangered, and so on. So this extinction tracker, remember we also talked about the Anthropogene epoch, something that is led by anthropogenic activities, and we are talking about what? Mass extinction. Okay, mass extinction, that means at a very, very short period of ecological time scale, you will find that most of the species have been extinct. Okay, so this tracker has said that Anthropocene and accelerating biodiversity loss, it has been a global emergency that has to be required with respect to immediate action. Okay. Now looking at this, what is the scale of crisis? The IUCN red list, it says that what has it undergone? 1,69,420 species. Out of that, near about 50,000 species, you can say 47,100 species, they face the threat of extinction. Okay? And this not only population decline, but systemic biodiversity collapse across all major taxa. This means, what does systemic mean? It means that we are talking not just about them, we are talking about the keystone species, we are also talking about the umbrella species that are under threat. Okay. So what is under risk? 169K, this is the overall assessment. How many species are there? Okay, that have been assessed. Threatened species 47,187 species. How many of these are tree species? We are talking about 38% tree species are endangered. Okay, they are also facing the risk of extinction. Now, when we talk about tree species, 38%, 11.5% amongst the bird species. Okay, 11.5%. So this study was published in Global Change Biology Project. Talks about approximately 8,000 vertebrate species. When we were talking about biodiversity, we're talking about vertebrates and invertebrates, right? How many, which ones are the greater in number? Invertebrate or vertebrate? Invertebrates are greater in number. And out of that, like when we talk about the vertebrate species, we have fishes as the greatest one. That means 50% of these species are there. We find that 8,000 vertebrate species are under the threat of extinction. 8,000 species. We are talking about vertebrates. Okay. Unsuitable thermal conditions across 52% of their range under worst case climate scenarios. So this points to the direction that we are talking about two different sections of environment. One, we are talking about biodiversity, and we are talking about climate change. How does climate change lead to biodiversity? Okay, basically we are talking about habitat degradation, habitat fragmentation. Okay. So the most important number here, 8,000 vertebrate, 38% species, bird species 11.5%, and 47K threatened species. Okay. Now Anthropocene epoch, that means how is Anthropocene, that is anthropogenic activities. We have seen that there is mass extinction. Okay, mass extinction as compared to the previous extinction events. We have been seeing that there is a rapid rise in extinction. It is close to 100 to 1,000 times. This is progressing at this pace as compared to the previous mass extinction. Okay, you had a question, previous year question on 6th mass extinction. Okay, that is the present one that is being accelerated due to the anthropogenic activities. It was something that was defined, but now it has also been observed through this report. Okay, so what is the defining characteristic? The proposed geological epoch denoting dominant human influence on Earth systems characterized by accelerated extinction rates 100 to 1000 times in background levels. Okay. What are some, at this point of time, what are some of the conventions that we have at the international stage? One is CBD 1992, we have seen in the static part. CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity 1992. Okay. Then IPBES Global Assessment 2019, what it has stated, this can be quoted in your exam, that 1 million species are at risk. How many species did we study in the class? There were near about 8.7 million species. That is yet to be discovered. We have just estimated that 8.7 million species are there. Out of them, 6.5 million. This is on land, this is in oceans or water. Okay. So this tells us that out of them, 1 million species are at risk. Close to 2 million species have been discovered. 8.7 million is the estimated number. Out of them, 6.5 million is on the land, 2.2 million on the waters. Then we studied about Kunming, Montreal. 2.2 million oceans or water bodies. Then you have Kunming, Montreal framework. Remember this? What was the preceding biodiversity target? It was Aichi biodiversity targets. Okay. Aichi biodiversity targets failed to achieve their strategic goals, strategic objectives. So we had a replacement. The replacement came in the form of Kunming Montreal framework. That is the 30 by 30 target. 30 by 30 target. What does this mean? 30 by 30 target, basically understand this, that 30% of the biodiversity that is present in land and 30% of that is present in the oceans by 2030. This is your Kunming Montreal biodiversity framework. Okay, again you're part of your static portion. Okay, this was in 2022. Now, climate biodiversity nexus. It is saying that climate change, how is it affecting biodiversity? The first is thermal stress. Thermal stress. Okay, because of thermal states, we have seen there is huge amount of climatic change impacts. The impacts can come in various formats. That is, when we talk about temperature, the temperature can rise. What will temperature rise will lead to? Rise in temperature will lead to? There will be decrease in the amount of dissolved oxygen dissolved. Okay. Moreover, with respect to increase in temperature, increase in global warming, there will be more amount of thermal expansion also. That means mean sea level rise. What else will I find? I will find that there is shrinking of cryosphere. Shrinking of cryosphere, that is the melting of glaciers as well as mixing of those water, fresh water into the river systems. So all of this will lead to what is known as the evil quartet. We have seen evil quartet. What is the first evil quartet that we have? Habitat fragmentation and degradation. Okay, habitat fragmentation and degradation. So this means that all of this creates and links your climate change impact to the biodiversity. So thermal stress, extreme heat and altered precipitation regimes, they shrink thermal niche. Thermal niche, especially for amphibians and reptiles. We have seen that amphibians and reptiles are cold-blooded. That means thermoregulation is something that is not possible for them. And therefore, the thermal niche, the range in which they operate in this domain, the habitat gets degraded. Okay, for thermal stress. Then you have Arctic amplification. We have seen Arctic amplification in the climate change part. What is Arctic amplification and why don't we have Antarctic one? Arctic is ocean surrounded by land, while Antarctic is land surrounded by ocean. Okay. So you will find more fluctuations when we consider sea breeze and land breeze here. Okay. So therefore, there is much more warming of the Arctic place. Okay. So warming occurring nearly 4 times. This also we have seen 4 times faster than the global average undermines the ice dependent species, such as one important thing is seals. Okay. Again pointing towards evil quartet, habitat degradation. Then ecosystem collapse. Now it tells about that if you are going to eliminate umbrella species, or you are going to eliminate the species that are keystone in nature from ecological significance point of view, if you are going to eliminate them, then it will lead to collapse of the ecosystem also, right? So functional extinction of staghorn and elkhorn corals indicates ecosystem service failure disrupting fisheries and coastal protection. Okay, what is staghorn and elkhorn? Staghorn, if you see the corals, there are different types. Okay, so this is like this. Okay, very woody in structure. It will feel like grasses. Okay, but thick in shape. Elkhorn is something that is much more flat. Okay, like this, and that would be out of the ground. Something like this. Okay, so difference in shapes is there with respect to staghorn and in elkhorn corals. Now these are found in very, very shallow waters. If you increase the temperature, the ambient temperature required for their survival is approximately what? 26 or 27 degrees Celsius. This much amount of heat, water is required. If you increase the temperature, then that will result into coral bleaching events. Okay. Now ecosystem collapse versus species loss. Here we talk about functional extinction. Functional extinction. When we talked about keystone species, we said that said that if it collapses, then you will have the collapse of entire ecosystem. One, and then you also had umbrella species. That is, if I conserve them, then I will also have conserved the other aspects of the ecosystem. Their prey, their habitats, okay, all of them would be conserved. So when we are talking about functional extinction, we are not just concerned with the extinction of the species. We are also saying that whatever functions that they perform within the ecosystem, that is also going extinct. Okay, points to which direction? One of the evil quartets that we talked about, co-extinction. Co-extinction. That means one species depends on the other species. If one species goes extinct, the other species will also go extinct. Okay, one of the examples that was there was of plant and pollinator. Okay, they have a certain obligation towards each other. Okay. So functional extinction of staghorn and elkhorn corals in Florida represents ecosystem service failure, not merely species decline. Coral reefs support 25% of marine biodiversity, and their collapse will disrupt fisheries, tourism, that means, and coastal protection globally. This means it will also have what is the economic impact on livelihoods. Okay, there is ecosystem services that are provided. One is provision. This is provisioning service. Okay. Then this is the table that is going that is given in your current affairs also. Okay, so understanding this, vertebrates, how much how many species are at risk? 8,000 species are at risk amongst the 30,000 that have been assessed. Okay. What is the key finding? That there is extreme heat vulnerability, more amount of thermal stress. Okay. Corals are one of the most productive ecosystems. Functional extinction, particularly understand this in association of symbiotic interaction. Algae and that is zooxanthellae and coral polyps. Florida reef builders have collapsed and ecosystem service that is at failure. What? This means out of the total vertebrates that we have, only 30,000 were assessed. Only these were tested. Assessment means testing. Okay. We have, suppose, say 5 lakh species in vertebrates. Out of them, only 30,000 were seen. They were assessed. whether their presence is there or not in the ecosystem. Arctic seals we have seen IUCN status downgrade. Now they are endangered. Again, it is because of thermal niche loss. Again, thermal stress. Okay. Birds, there has been systemic decline, and 1,256 out of 11,000 birds, they are now threatened. Okay. Do not need to remember all the numbers, but vertebrates, corals, birds, and trees. Okay. Understanding what are their importance. Then you have trees, 38% species are threatened. Fungi, under recognized loss, 411 at risk out of 1,300 that are assessed. When we talk about fungi, what is the role of fungi in the ecosystem? Decomposer, है ना? Decomposer. For decomposers, I have two things. One is bacteria and the other is fungi. When we talk about bacteria, which one of these are the ones that will rapidly decompose? Bacteria or fungi? Bacteria decomposes at a faster rate. Okay. So when we have more amount of fungi, if we have no fungi, there is no decomposition. But if we have more amount of bacteria, it will decompose faster. If we have fungi, decomposition is there. If I remove fungi, there is no decomposition also. Okay. African freshwater fish, this is not something that you need to, in the exam. But habitat and overfishing, 26% of threatened out of 3,200 species. Multiple stresses are there. Okay. Mainly summarizing whatever we have seen up until now. Okay. So this is again from a static portion. Habitat and land use pressure. We are talking about again evil quartet. Habitat pressure is there. That means that when we were talking about the total geographical area available for India, how much is it? 2.4%. We were talking about then two things. One was how much of the global biodiversity is housed in India. It is 8%. This is the total biodiversity. Total biodiversity India. And then we also talk about what is the population level of the total global population. Okay, that is the census itself. That is 17 to 18%. When these two compete for the scarce habitat, that is the scarce geographical area that we have, there is a land use pressure that is created. That is, these will strive for degradation of forest, degradation of grasslands, and they will go for urbanization. Rising needs of crops. So you will have more amount of agriculture. And because you will realize that there is climate change, there would be decrease, there might be decrease in the crop yields also. So, overuse of fertilizers and over irrigation. Okay. So one is agricultural expansion, urbanization, logging drive tree species extinction. Okay, logging drive tree species. This means that you are going for felling of trees. Threatened trees now exceed the threatened vertebrates combined globally. Island ecosystems exhibit disproportionate extinction rates due to invasive species and habitat isolation, compounding the conservation challenge. With respect to invasive species, if I have a high island habitat, there can be disproportionate extinction rate. Why? One, because under the islands, we have seen this, that under islands, I will have shipping routes. And moreover, the ecosystem resiliency of islands is limited to a few variety. Therefore, these are fragile ecosystems. If they are invaded by aquatic species, then there would be further extinction rate. It would be rapid. Okay. Okay. Governance deficits. Governance deficits, what does it talk about? One, financing gap. This is an important figure. That when we are talking about climate finance, okay, climate finance, how inadequate was it? When we were talking about ambition gap, it said that it is of the order of $300 billion, approximately 300 or $365 billion. Okay, add to that inflation rate and you will get around $450 billion. Right. Similarly, it talks about that there is a financing deficit in the global biodiversity finance gap. And how much is it estimated at? $700 billion annually. That was also annually. Okay. When we are linking both of these, climate finance and then biodiversity finance, there is a huge amount of financial gap. Okay. Management deficiency. Protected areas often lack effective management and connectivity corridors, reducing the conservation effectiveness. Okay. This we are saying protected areas. When we were talking about protected areas, this is under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Then we talk about conservation reserves and also community reserves. Okay. And in case of elephants, specifically when we talk about elephants, we are talking about elephant corridors, because we understand these are mega grazers, mega herbivores. They will consume a lot, and because of that, they have to move from one habitat to the other. They often lack effective management and connectivity corridors, reducing conservation effectiveness. This means I will have more amount of human-wildlife conflict. Human-wildlife conflict. Assessment gap. Expansion of red list assessments needed for fungi, invertebrates and freshwater taxa to reduce the conservation blind spots. This means we are just assessing mostly the vertebrates. Okay, there has to be expansion for fungi, invertebrates and other taxa as well. Then you have critically endangered species with respect to India. Species, like we have approximately 8% of the global biodiversity across 4 biodiversity hotspots. We were talking about around 7 to 8%. Under the land, 2.4%. Okay. We are talking about critically endangered ones. Critically endangered Great Indian Bustard and Gangetic Dolphin. What is the IUCN status for Gangetic Dolphin? Great Indian Bustard is critically endangered. Okay. Dolphin is endangered. Okay, all types of dolphin. Whether it is Irrawaddy, whether it is Indus dolphin or whether it is Gangetic dolphin. Remain critically endangered due to habitat fragmentation and infrastructure expansion. Okay. India's climate vulnerability amplifies biodiversity stress in Himalayas, Western Ghats and coastal zones. What are the biodiversity hotspots of India? 4. Sundalands, Western Ghats. Yes. Sundalands, basically. Okay. So we are saying that these are in the zones also. The zones are particularly biodiversity hotspots. Biodiversity hotspots would mean 70% has been degraded. 70% degraded, and you have 1500, at least 1500 vascular plants. So it is saying that climate change can occur actually in these zones itself when we are talking about Himalayan ecosystems. Okay. So forward critical actions. One is implement 30 by 30. That is your Kunming Montreal biodiversity framework. Then natural capital. That is biodiversity accounting. That is include them in the economics part. Include in your economics, so that there is proper valuation. Third, climate mitigation. Then we are talking about climate mitigation. Limit warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. This was one of the objectives of PA. What is PA? Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement. Finance mechanism, debt for nature swaps and blended climate nature funds. Okay, that is we are talking about not just climate finance. Let us have a blended fund that will also talk about biodiversity conservation along with this. Okay. Next, conservation of India's small wild cats. We always talk about the big cats. Okay, this is about small wild cats. So there are urgent challenges facing leopard cats. What are these small cats? Leopard cats, jungle cats and rusty spotted cats in human dominated landscapes across India. Okay. Again under biodiversity conservation efforts. Okay. So first, the growing crisis. Okay, understand, again we are talking about evil quartet. Again evil quartet. But the issue here is that these wildcats, okay, acha, in biotechnology, when we talk about domestication, is domestication a biotechnological aspect? When we talk about a wild animal, they get domesticated. That means I can understand that a 5-year-old wild animal gets domesticated over its time period, and by the time it turns into 12 or 15 years, it is domesticated. But now this domestication is passed on by its genes to its further animals, further offsprings. That means they are also domesticated. Over a period of time, you will find that this is a genetic inheritance. That means the wild species are now domesticated. That means there has been a genetic change. So this is a biotechnological process. So what has been seen, the crisis, the main aspect of this issue is that people find wildcats. Okay, people find wildcats. They find them very, very cute, and that is why they will rescue them. Okay, that means rescue, but without proper awareness. What will this lead to? Further domestication. Okay, that means if you leave them again after the domestication process is complete, if you leave them in the wild, they will not be able to sustain themselves, right? So it was seen that rescue without proper awareness, people are thinking that okay, rescue is a good thing to do, but actually it is something very deteriorating in the long term. So this was the issue. Okay, so small wildcats increasingly face threats from habitat fragmentation, agricultural expansion, again evil quartet. Unlike large carnivores, these species frequently inhabit semi-urban landscapes, wetlands, agricultural fields, and community-led lands, leading to frequent human encounters. Okay? Well-intentioned citizen interventions such as rescuing cute kittens often result in accidental domestication attempts or fuel the illegal pet trade, significantly complicating conservation efforts. When we are talking about this domestication part, what this also will lead to is, when we talk about CITES, illegal pet trade. What is CITES? CITES. Is CITES legally binding? CITES. That is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, signed in 1975. And also CITES is legally binding. Okay. And the recent amendment of WPA 1972, it also incorporates the CITES listed species. Okay. So one thing is human wildlife interface. Why human wildlife interface? Because we will find them in such kind of landscapes. Therefore, the humans will come forward and rescue them. Then systemic infrastructure gaps. Current wildlife rescue infrastructure lacks capacity of proper rehabilitation and rewilding of small carnivores. This means that since people are going forward, since people are saying that, okay, there has to be a rescue that has to be done, so there has to exist an infrastructure. There has to exist a system in which they can be rescued, and then proper rewilding must be done. Okay, but right now we do not have any such kind of thing. Okay. Community awareness is also needed that rescue is not the conservation effort, it is actually a domestication process. Okay. So these are some facts related to what is happening. Growing reports of small cat rescues and rewilding cases across Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam and Pune district. They have highlighted the systemic gaps. Okay. First is increased rescue reports. Increased rescue reports, that has been documented that people are rescuing them more. Second, exposure of systemic gaps that we have seen, infrastructural gaps. Call for national framework. So this necessitated that not only conservation, but also rewilding or preventing the amount of domestication. Okay, domestication. Now protection status, legal framework and ecological role. Talk about protection status. Leopard cat and rusty protected cat, they are under Wildlife Protection Act. Remember we talked about hunting under Wildlife Protection Act. Does that mean if you are in possession of these animals, then you can be penalized, right? Because it counts under hunting itself, right? Even if you are there with the dead body of the animal, even that possession is considered to be hunting, right? So this means that if you are opting for them as pet, that means it is a violation of WPA 1972. Second, stringent penalties for hunting, trade or possession. Okay, there is protection for these animals. India is a signatory to CITES. We have already seen CITES. Okay, regulating international wildlife trade. Two problems arise, that is we have seen. One problem is pet trade. The other problem is domestication. Okay. Ecological importance. They act as mesopredators. What does mesopredators mean? Middle. Meso means middle. Okay. That means they are not even at the top. They are not at the bottom also. They are somewhere in the middle. This is mesopredator, controlling the rodent population. Rodent population is something that can rapidly multiply. Maintain ecosystem balance in agricultural and wetland landscapes. Thrive in mosaic habitats. What does mosaic habitat mean? Remember we were talking about beta diversity. Beta diversity, that is we are comparing two different types of, if there is forest, there is grassland, there is desert. The beta diversity is high. Okay. These are contained in mosaic habitats. That means human dominated also, forest dominated also, grasslands, wetlands. So considerable number of diversity. That means they are very, very abundant in habitats. Abundant habitats. And not exclusively protected areas. When we are talking about protected areas, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, all of them are there. So we are saying beyond these areas also I can find them in mosaic habitats, okay, in a mixture of habitats. So critical conservation challenge, one is habitat fragmentation, evil quartet, illegal pet trade risk, okay, limited trained responders. That means citizen awareness is not there and therefore there is no amount of training. Remote areas lack wildlife veterinarians and rescue specialists with proper expertise. Even if they are rescued, they are not taken to the right expertise. Okay. Scarce rewilding centers. Then we are talking about if they are domesticated. Is there a process? Is there some kind of system that we have for rewilding? So this is also inadequate. Okay. Weak reporting systems. Absence of national wild helpline leads to unreported incidents and delayed responses. That means even if you rescue a kitten, you will find that you cannot call anyone so that you can train them properly. Okay. So these are your challenges. Then environmental and governance dimensions. One is landscape level planning, because we talked about one, mosaic habitat, range of habitats. And also we talk about that beyond protected areas, if there has to be a conservation effort, then it has to be beyond protected areas also for these kind of species. Second, improper rescue impact. Improper rescue and captivity disrupt natural hunting instincts and reduce survival chances upon release. Two things. One, natural hunting instincts, and then we talk about survival skills in the wild. Okay. Formalized protocols, current and ad hoc coordination between forest departments and NGOs needs nationwide standardization. Three things. ठीक है. One is public awareness. When we talk about social, ethical and economical considerations in the way forward, one is public awareness, that is citizens must be made aware. Okay, that is one thing, is one keyword here is citizen science. Okay, Second is corporate role, because we talk about not just the government, because the government cannot operate solely on its own. It needs various kinds of organizations, be it in the form of NGOs or be it in the form of private sector. Okay, so it is saying that let us also involve the private sectors who can operate in these kind of fields. Okay. So National Wildlife Helpline, one here is, these two we have seen, National Wildlife Helpline, trained responders, soft release centers. What does this mean? Soft release. You will also have hard release. Okay. The difference between the two is hard release means that a domesticated wild animal, a domesticated animal is directly, without giving it any kind of time, directly released into the wild. Okay, again it will be threatened. Okay. Soft release means that you give it some time. Okay, it is bred in captivity and then for some time it will have the wilding effect, that is rewilding. So expand rehabilitation facilities specifically designed for small carnivores. These can be enhanced. Okay. Then forward priority action, community awareness, integration into landscape planning, structured partnerships, that is between forest departments, NGOs and veterinary networks. Capacity building, that is for the carnivore handling, small carnivore handling. Rescue protocols, that if you want to rescue them, then how should you proceed and whether you should keep them for a very, very long time or not. How much time can you go for decreasing the amount of domestication effect. And rewilding procedures. ठीक है? Now this is again at the crossroads of two things. One is climate change and the other is biodiversity. Okay. So it has been observed that Eurasian diving duck, it has found its presence in Kaziranga. It signals a climate change effect. Why? Because the habitat is mainly for these type of species. The habitat is Eurasian taiga. Okay. Taiga, we have seen boreal forests, right? Boreal forest, or you could also say coniferous forest. So it was the first ever sighting during the 7th water bird census at Kaziranga National Park. This Eurasian diving duck is native to Eurasian taiga and represents both a positive indicator of wetland health and potential warning sign of climate driven range shifts. Two things. One, it is saying that I am talking about the wetland systems that are present in Kaziranga. We have seen in the case of rhinoceros that they maintain these grasslands, they maintain the wetlands. One, wetlands are in a very, very good health. This is an indicator when we are finding such kind of Eurasian ducks. Okay. But secondly, something that is indicator of a shift in climate change. Because how does this habitat change happen? That is particularly because of the thermal stress. So one positive thing, that wetlands are in a good condition, that we are able to maintain the wetlands. The second thing is it is an impact of climate change that their habitat has changed. Now 7th water bird census. How many individuals? 1,05,540 individuals that have been surveyed. These have been surveyed in the wetlands that we have. Okay. 107 species were recorded. 18 are threatened species. When we talk about threatened species, we are saying IUCN, critically endangered to near threatened categories. This is the category under which you will find threatened species. Survey coverage, 166 wetlands, 10 ranges and within 1302 kilometers square of Kaziranga National Park. Okay, Kaziranga National Park is composed of two wildlife sanctuaries. One is Laokhova, and the second is Burha Chapori. Okay. Abundant species you can see. One is bar-headed goose, other is northern pintail, and lesser whistling duck. These three. Bar-headed goose, you can write, northern pintail, and lesser whistling duck. These are abundant, not threatened. Okay. Top wetlands distribution and diversity. So you will find that 166 surveyed wetlands. Which ones have the abundance? It is Raumari and Dondua Beals. Beals means lakes. Emerging as the most significant water bird habitats in terms of both population numbers and species richness. Again, we talk about species richness and species evenness. That is what they are calculating here also. How much diversity is present. So the largest, highest diversity site, these two you can write down. Raumari Bill and Dondua Bill. These two. Okay. One thing is this bird has been seen here, okay, because there has been a shift, climate change shift. So one, it is an indicator species. We talk about different terms that will denote different types of species. Indicator species means that it will talk to us about any kind of environmental degradation. If there is environmental degradation, then you will find that pollution levels are high and the population decline will take place. So first is ecological significance. It prefers fish-rich, sheltered wetlands with healthy aquatic ecosystems. Arrival at Kaziranga indicates that robust floodplain resilience is there. This is the positive news. Positive indication. Negative indication is that there has been range shift. Okay, native to Eurasian taiga regions, the SMU typically winters in temperate wetlands. This sighting represents a significant southward expansion. That is, they have been migrating. And because they have been migrating, I should also be very, very cognizant of the migratory routes. One of the nodal points is Kaziranga National Park itself. Okay. Suggesting climate-driven distributional shifts such as Arctic warming alters traditional migration patterns and wintering routes. Population context, global population estimated at 130,000 individuals. That is fine. One thing that you should remember is Central Asian Flyway. This means this is a kind of route, this is a kind of migratory route that these kind of birds will take. Migratory route. Okay, so conserving not only the habitat, it is also important to conserve this kind of migratory route for these species. Then imperative of long-term monitoring. That means ecosystem health as well as climate disruption. One, annual census continuity. That is, we should not be having census at a very, very delayed levels. Second, regional collaboration, share findings across flyway nation. We talked about Central Asian Flyway. We are saying that there must be collaboration between the nations because this is again a problem that extends beyond the political boundaries. Adaptive management, that is update conservation strategies as climate patterns evolve. Okay, adaptive management means that when you are facing habitat degradation, how do you change your conservation strategies also? Okay, that means whatever your protected areas were, do you need to shift them? Do you need to go for conservation of wetlands? Okay. Next, this is in the context of what we study as bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Okay. Now it is showing its effect. That means we were talking about the toxins or the pollutants that are fat soluble. Okay, fat soluble, and therefore you will find that it will build up in one organism and it will be passed on to the trophic levels as well. So it has been found that tetrodotoxin poisoning was present, and because of that, 2 people have lost their lives. 2 people lost their lives because of consuming of the seafood. Okay. So this is important from this year's point of view. They may ask this. Okay, poisoning. And they may also ask you the concept of bioaccumulation or biomagnification. So what is it about? They won't go into the details of it, but still, it is a potent neurotoxin, causes toxicity in the neurological aspect, found in certain marine animals, mostly notably pufferfish, but also in blue-ringed octopus, newts, and some shellfish. Okay, you have heard about shellfish poisoning also, right? It is a naturally occurring compound. That means if we say that it is artificially made, it is synthetic, it is man-made. No, it is naturally occurring. It can cause rapid and severe poisoning, making it a critical public health concern in regions where these animals are consumed. First, extreme potency. These are the most potent non-protein toxins known. A dose smaller than a grain of salt can be lethal. That means they have extreme poisoning effect. Okay. That means even in small quantities, they can have a poisoning effect on the organisms. Second, heat resistance. This means that it is very, very stable. Third, it is having no antidote. That means there is no cure. No cure as per the present time. Okay. So you can read heat resistance. Unlike many toxins, TTX is not destroyed by conventional cooking. This means that even if you provide heat to it and if you feel that bioaccumulation or biomagnification can stop because of that, that is not the case. Very stable. Okay. No antidote. There is currently no known antidote for this poisoning. Treatment focuses on supportive care. Supportive care such as respiratory assistance until the toxin is naturally metabolized. Naturally metabolized means it is naturally excreted out. So when we talk about the lethal dose, extreme potency, it is very, very small, ranging from 1 to 2 milligrams. 1 to 2 milligrams. That means even this amount is lethal. Okay. Then immediate public health actions. One, source traceback. What do you mean by source traceback? That means we are finding where does this originate from. Remember we were talking about vultures and diclofenac. That is, we found out, how did we find out? It was through source traceback only. That is, we found that carcasses are being consumed by the vultures, and because of that, this has to be completely eliminated and replaced by something meloxicam. Okay, one is traceback. Community alert, issue advisory against red snapper consumption. This is one thing. Target coastal markets and restaurants with multilingual warnings. Clinical preparedness, that is, since there is no cure, there can be only support that can be given. So prepare for that. Fourth, lab testing. Okay. That is, toxin screening capabilities, confirm suspected cases and contamination, map contamination patterns. Okay. So these are some of the public health actions that can be taken. Okay. Key takeaways would be this. Rapid recognition, that is neurological symptoms and respiratory paralysis. Suspect TTX, not bacterial food poisoning. Oftentimes there is a problem because of misdiagnosis of the case, and therefore you do not provide for actual preventive or supportive care. ठीक है? So it should be known that if there is a combination of neurological symptoms as well as respiratory paralysis, it is because of this TTX itself. Source control, that is red snapper and reef fish from affected regions, require immediate screening. That is, you map such kind of areas where such kind of poisoning is taking place and stop that source. Supportive care, no antidote available. Again, we are seeing this respiratory support and early intervention. Okay. Then coming to the next part, Eurasian otter in Kashmir. Eurasian otter in Kashmir. Okay. In Kashmir, Eurasian otter was not known to be present. That means it was felt that it is locally extinct. That means all the population have declined. But recently there were sightings of Eurasian otter in the Kashmir Valley. Okay, particularly where? Sindh Canal and Kashmir Valley. Okay. Now talking about conservation status of Eurasian otter. So globally, okay, we were talking about locally extinct in Kashmir, but globally it is near threatened when we talk about the IUCN status. When we talk about sites, that is in Appendix 1, heavily protected. With respect to WPA Schedule 2, okay, Schedule 1 has higher degree of protection. Okay, some of the species that are similar to these otter, one is Eurasian otter, smooth coated otter and small clawed otter. These are different types of otter species found in various places. When we talk about Eurasian otter, it is mainly in the Himalayas, northeast and the western Ghats. We are again talking about the biodiversity hotspots of India, but with respect to smooth coated otter, it is throughout India. Okay, you will find it in throughout India. Small clawed otter, again Himalayas or southern India, but near threatened globally. Okay. Now some characteristics. One, it has a very streamlined body. Okay, streamlined body will help it to gain more speed. That means greater speed. Second, it has webbed feet. You can see. That means the individual fingers are not present. Third, powerful tail for propulsion. Okay, this one does not have a tail in the picture. So it is also important for propulsion. We are also talking about the speed of it. That means it can navigate. Whiskers are present for prey detection underwater. Okay, underwater you will have more prey detection because of these whiskers. More characteristics. First, with respect to the size of the body, you will find that males are greater than female. Second, it is carnivorous. That means most of its diet is derived from fish. Fish is 80% of the diet. This means that if there is a decline in fish population, then that means it will also affect the nutritional balance for the smooth otter, the Eurasian otter. Secondly, solitary. Solitary means isolationist. That is, they are not very social in nature. Second, territorial. Territorial means that they will not tolerate other individuals in their own territory. Other individuals not tolerated. They will fight. Nocturnal, come out at night. Nocturnal. They are also keystone and bioindicator species. Keystone and bioindicator. Again, environmental degradation, any type of habitat degradation, you will find that their population will decline. Okay. So this is all. all the 5 issues. Okay.